My theme this morning is it's a setup. That's a topic that I want to talk to you about. I'm really, really excited about this morning. Now, I just want to mention that as you guys have been picked up, it's my mom's birthday in the week as well. Sy raak oud. En so ja, hoe ouer sy raak, hoe moeiliker raak sy. Ek kan nou sê net wat ek wil. You know, don't be confused. People get brave when they're on here, but you know it's a different story when we walk down. So it's my privilege to minister my last message to you this morning. We had a good run. And so this message this morning is dedicated to my mom. A lot of the points that I'm highlighting this morning, she's actually the inspiration for that. And so we just want to celebrate her in the week that is about to come. So, let's start. I want you to journey with me to a place called the Museum of Israel. The Museum of Israel. Now, the museum is very, very important because it contains certain cultural elements to the nation of Israel that is vital to their culture, their history, and it becomes extremely valuable. Now, in this Museum of Israel, there's this odd piece of stone that they've got. I want to show you this picture. Now, to us, I would walk past this and not even look at it. It doesn't even matter anything. It's just a piece of stone. What happened was that this piece of stone is called the Tel Dan Stele. Okay, that's how they pronounce it, and I want you to read with me quickly. And this is from a website called Biblical Archaeology, or even if you don't trust this website, you can find this information quite generally everywhere. But just to source where I got the specific information from, I'm just giving them credit. The Tel Dan inscription, or House of David inscription, was discovered in 1993 at the site of Tel Dan in northern Israel in an excavation directed by Israeli archaeologist Avraham Biran. Now, before you carry on with this section, I want you to go back to the picture quickly for me. Now, what is phenomenal about this, we've just read a sentence, but we don't understand what we just read for a second. It's the only archaeological evidence in the world that contains a reference to the house of David. The only archaeological evidence in the entire world. Now, for us in the church, this is just But for people outside the church, this is quite significant because the Old Testament is watered down to myth. In other words, when we read the Old Testament, even inside the church, we have a mythological, yes, that's a real word, I'm a professional. We've got this mythological idea when we read these stories, and it becomes this fantasy story, you know. And especially because when we read our children's Bible book, it becomes even more cartoonish. And I'm not criticizing kids' books. I think it's fantastic. I mean, I was raised with my mom reading these stories. I had this amazing sense of humor. It was one evening late. I was lying in my sister's bed. Leandra, jy het nog so 'n poster van 'n hond bo op jou bed. Ek kan nog onthou hierso. Ja, ek het 'n fantastiese memory. In elk geval, and my mom was reading the story of Cain and Abel, okay? And that whole night, every time my mom said Abel, I said it rhymes with marble, okay? And I would laugh and I would get a hiding because I was funny, okay? But I wasn't so funny because the hiding was really severe. Anyway, so there was just some silly stuff that I did. Leandra was smiling and she didn't have front teeth back then. She had an accident. It was fun times. She always said friends, okay? In any case, we were just teasing her with that. I only found later on, I was the reason she didn't have any teeth, but okay, so it wasn't then so funny. Anyway, coming back to this is that it's significant because there's some evidence that the house of David existed outside the Bible, okay? Now, because we read the Bible and we've got this fairy tale idea, it's difficult for us to put some credibility on this. But here, this archaeologist found this piece of stone, and it was actually used to build up another wall. This is how they excavated it. And it found this inscription where an enemy king defeated 2 kings from the house of David. Now, it becomes interesting when we break this a little bit down. You can go back to the next slide quickly, and then the one after this one for me, please. Unfortunately, so there's some bad news, the recovered fragments of the House of David inscription do not preserve the names of the specific kings involved in this brutal encounter. In other words, the only reference we pick up on is the house of David, but the specific kings, there's only certain letters that pops up from the specific kings. So purely based from this inscription, it's very difficult to determine who these kings were and who this archaeological evidence is pointing out to. But most scholars believe the stela recounts a campaign of Hazael of Damascus, and I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong just in case, in which he defeated both that one of Israel and that one of Judah. Now, they actually give the names. But I'm going to tell you later who the names is. Okay, so we're going to get back to this. I just want to build some suspense. So they're giving these hints, and most scholars are looking at this, and they've got an idea who this is, and they're not completely sure. But they do give us two names. But I need you to hold on to the end before I'm going to give you the names, because there's something awesome when you go study these names. Now, how they pick up on these names is the following reason. The inscription contains several lines written in the Aramaic language. Now, what makes this phenomenal is that it's very close to Hebrew as well. Actually, a lot of inscriptions when it comes to biblical times is Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Those are the three main languages. So immediately, archaeologists can kind of smaller the zone to where this was written, okay? Not only where it was written, but when it was written, and this is phenomenal. It has been dated to the 9th century BC or BCE. Now, the only difference between BC and BCE is the one stands before Christ, and the other one means exactly the same thing, but they just take out Jesus' name, and then they say before Common Era. But the time period is very, very phenomenal. So, based on the date and the language, we get some hints to who it was. And this is where these two names pop up. But you'll have to wait later for the answer on that. I want to jump. We're gonna talk about this, and this is the entire story that I want to talk to you about. But I want to jump away from that, and I'm going to come back to that. And I want to talk to you about Pastor Peter Hansen's dream that he had. In this week now, Pastor Peter Hansen, that name will mean nothing to general population. But to us who's been raised under his leadership, to us who saw this man, who knew this man, who grew up with this individual, know that this is a serious gentleman when it comes to God. He is 85 years old. But his mind is as fresh as a lemon. That guy has got the capabilities. I was just laughing because, not in a bad way, but when my father and I, when we went to visit him, he was a little bit confused about who my dad is, because my dad looks a little bit different now than when he saw him the first time. And I can see him frowning a little bit. And I thought, oh, Pastor Hansen, jou klats gly nou heeltemal. Jy het nie 'n klou weer. And he looks at my dad, and my dad said, Pieter, dis Johan Maritz. And the moment my dad said his name, this gentleman had a stroke many years ago, a skew smile came up on his face, and immediately knew who was standing in front of him. And I'm going to try to make a very, very long story as short as possible, but there's some significant information that I want to share with you that is important to my theme. It's a setup. Pastor Hansen had a dream about my father, and he had this urgency. Now, I just want to tell you quickly, this is an old school, cool pastor, okay? He doesn't play with God. He doesn't joke around. He doesn't do what he does because he wants to take up an offering. This is a guy in an old age home that sits there, and when God's Spirit moves him, he speaks. When God's Spirit moves him, he prophesies. It's not a guy who does things for his own fame. It's not a guy who benefits anything from making up any story. He's at the end of his life. And he tells the story. He had this urgency to speak to my dad. And he said he had a dream about our church. And as he walked into the church, he saw a big throne room standing up on this pulpit over here. Now, it's no reference to any pastor. It's a reference and what he experienced. It's almost like the throne room of God. what he saw. And again, no reference specifically to our church. You will get the point what I'm trying to make later. And he saw this throne, and next to the throne was 24 elders with crowns on their head. Okay, this is significant because of the resemblance to Old Testament theology, which I'm sure he hasn't even read because it's recent findings, and he's dreaming. Okay, I'm using the word dream just to make people comfortable, but I'm convinced this was a vision. But let's call it a dream. I mean, just for people who are a little bit skeptic about this, because I understand you don't know him, and there's no validity about what I'm trying to explain. That's a real word. What I'm trying to explain to you guys. Any case, saw the 24 elders standing, and in this corner was a gentleman standing up, I'm going to assume there by the prayer room, and he noticed that Jesus walks into this room and takes the seat. But he mentioned something interesting. He says, it's God's seat, but Jesus assumed authority for that period of time. So very interesting specifics that he's pointing out. In any case, as Jesus took his place, the 24 elders came and they put down their crowns and they bowed down to Jesus. Again, it's very, very, can I use the word Old Testament theology, except for the Jesus part there and a little bit in Revelations. In any case, Jesus takes his seat, and this gentleman in the corner walks in front of Jesus, and he's got a big notepad, a thick notepad with a lot of lists and things standing on this notepad. And this guy, gentleman, whatever, starts reading from this book, and he's pointing out issues that needs to be addressed. And then Pastor Peter said the following. He said, and as this guy was reading, Jesus would answer in two ways. He would say something like, but this is not my will at this moment. I do not want this to be done at this moment. And then on other occasions, he would come to the point where Jesus says, you know, it's time that we need to respond to this request. And as Pastor Peter Hansen was standing there, he noticed a familiar name popping up on this list as he was dreaming, but for us in the church, we call this a vision. As he was seeing something, he says, and a name pops up, and the full name is Johannes Hendrik Puniani Maritz, okay? Obviously, I'm adding a little bit information just to but the name Johann Maritz pops up. And the gentleman in front says something. He says, Lord, this name has been popping up a couple of times now on this list. And a lot of people have been praying for Johann for specific healing. And Jesus turns around and he says to this gentleman, well, it's time that we then do something about this. This is a dream an 85-year-old man has that's got no benefit. There's no benefit for him. There's no benefit. He had one thing. He said he had a dream and he needs to tell Johannes Hendrik Puniani Maritz about this dream. He carries on in his dream and he says he gets taken up into heaven. Now again, you can take this as fable. You can take this as he had too much desperate to drink. It's your call what you believe. I'm just sharing the story that was told. He goes up into heaven, Pastor Peter Hansen, and he's joyous because he's stuck in a wheelchair. And for the first time, and he starts weeping as he says, for the first time he walks again. This is what he's experienced, and he walks into heaven, and he speaks about the pearly gates and all those things, and he gets to his house because he's got one desire. He wants to go where his wife is. Okay, Tannie Marie Hansen, the most amazing old lady, man. The one thing that I can always remember about her is the way she kissed me. She would, yes, but it wasn't. It was a little bit odd, okay? I'm going to be honest. She would pull her mouth very tightly, very close, and it's like a klein blommetjie lippies would be there. And she would kiss you, but it would feel like she doesn't really want to kiss you, okay? It's just soft. It's just a hello. She's careful, but there's etiquette, you know? She's a lady. In any case, beautiful lady. And he walks to his house, and he wants to see his wife. And guess what he sees on the porch as he's walking there? He sees his mom. I want you to listen to what I'm trying to say. I want you to take this picture of Jesus and this team functioning. I want you to pick up on this. I want you to pick up that Jesus, even if Jesus is a with respect, an odd term for you if you don't believe. Let's use the word God. God's sitting on the throne and he's got a team functioning. I want you to pick up on that picture. Now we see when Peter Hansen going to heaven and he's longing for his wife and he sees his mommy sitting over there. I want you to think about this. A mom who was involved in his life. A mom that was connected, a mom that meant something to him. And he's excited, and it's so funny. He was on his way to meet his wife, but when he saw his mom, the story of his wife kind of stopped. He didn't tell us he saw his wife. He saw his mom sitting on the porch waiting for him. And as he walks into his house, he sees his dad sitting next to his mom. And the first thing he asks his mom is, Mama, ek bly om jou te sien, but why is daddy here? Okay, now, don't get me wrong. He wasn't bad-mouthing his dad. He wasn't saying his dad was a bad person. Not at all. He actually loved his dad. But he had this idea that his dad wasn't saved. A good person, but not saved. And his mom, and he talks to his mom and looks at his mom and says, Mom, why is dad here? He's not saved. And his mommy in this dream turns to me and says, that's what you thought. Man, I'm sitting and listening to an old woman in 85 years old sitting in his wheelchair, and he doesn't even care if I believe him. He does not care if I believe him. He doesn't even care if his own children believes him. He says he's got a message that he wants to share to Pastor John. Now, what I want you to pick up on this element, and why am I sharing this whole story, is that I want you to see this idea of teamwork, togetherness. Even this phenomenal man, Pastor Peter Hansen, the first thing that he sees, the first thing that he connects to is his mom and his dad and his wife. I want you to see that connectedness. I want you to hear humility. I want you to hear love. I want you to hear that his mom and his dad was precious to him. I want you to hear relationship. I want you to hear connectedness. Now, the idea, when I'm going to talk about symbiosis, you can stay on there, is that even in a modern time, he's having this experience of a dream. But this idea of symbiosis is an old one already, okay? Symbiosis is a concept that comes from the beginning of when we see religion popping up. And by the way, as we trace civilization, we trace religion. It's not separate things. You don't get civilization and then religion. You get civilization and religion. It's just connected. Any case. And as the modern man is tracing this religion concept, we see a aspect of symbiosis. The idea is that mankind on earth is working and functioning and building temples and making sacrifices so that the gods above can have food and shelter. So this is a common idea in religion in general. Man is not really slaves, but man is the workforce that builds up these deities and sustains them. So the concept is symbiosis. Both parties, the divine and the purely flesh, men and women on the floor over here, there's a connectedness, a dependency, a codependency on one another. Now, here's the interesting thing. The Bible has a similar approach, but yet it's still different. Because never in our Bible do we sacrifice to give God food. In every other religion, okay, maybe every is maybe going a little bit far. In a lot of other religions, the sacrificing of food is a connectedness to feeding the heavens. The idea of building temples, and you will pick this up even in our even in our Bible, that the idea of a temple is to build a house for God. But I want you to get this. What makes the Jewish faith, or what I can link our Christian faith to this, different is that there's never this symbiosis idea. There's always this family idea when it comes to God. And the idea to build a house for God is not that he doesn't have a place to stay. The idea that Solomon and them built a temple is to have God with them as they've been traveling. So they are not sustaining God. The Old Testament is extremely clear that God is sustaining them. So even though we've got this similar idea of symbiosis, the similar idea of, I don't want to say codependency, but you guys are picking up on what I'm saying. The similar idea, yet it's a little bit different when it comes to our journey and our faith. Now, why am I telling you all these things? Because I think God has created us to do things together. There is a form of connectedness, of being united, of family. There's something special and unique about this that is crucial to our walk with God. And it was nothing different for Pastor Peter Hansen. There was something about togetherness. Even his vision of Jesus on the throne is the most influential man on the earth, and we can call him man just for people who don't believe, but man, God in the flesh, he's most powerful, most influential, but yet there's a desire to do things together with lesser beings. Yet there's a desire to come down to earth and eat a visie by a braai next to the sea with his disciples. Yet there's this longing. Over and over again, we see even in the Old Testament, there's this longing of God to be reconciled, but we keep on messing things up. There's this beautiful connectedness. This is important, and I'm sharing this with you, and again, in honor of my mom over here, is that many times what we experience in our life is not because we are good. Not because we are fantastic. I want you to pick up on this. In my life, I had a mom that set me up for success. Leandra had a mom that set her up for success. I recall a time when I was young, and again, I want you to think about this togetherness, this connectedness. Pastor Hansen with his mom that he sees, and Jesus sitting in this throne room and people functioning. It's this beautiful family illustration. I can remember a time when I was younger where my mom dropped me off at school and I was the only dude with school uniform on, okay? And everyone else had service on. And there was no way, I was grade 1, but there was no way on this earth that I'm going to go to school in school uniform and everyone else had so. There's no way, okay? The school is Belleville North. It's just, it's not Belleville Primary, Belleville North. It's just a little bit further up. And my mom worked up Durban Road. Now, it's quite a long distance. There's quite a lot of roads. Now, I want you to get this, okay? I didn't want to wear my school uniform. So what my mom does, she drops me off halfway to the school. And when it's half a block, okay? So it's not like there's anything. It's just down the road. My mom greets me, okay? And she says, lekker dagie vir jou. I walk with my peanut butter broodjies with the peanut butter only in the middle, okay? With a smile, I go to school. You guys know what I'm talking about, okay? Amen. Good times. and my mom turns around and she walks, okay? Because to me, I'm grade 1. What do I know? My mom walks to work. For the first time in my life, being so scared to go to school because of uniform. Any case, I walk behind my mom, but she's a block ahead of me. Now, a residential block is quite large, okay? She's a block ahead of me. For the first time in my life, I'm walking with her all the way from this bottom up. Ek was seker graad 1 seker, né? Klein mannetjie. Walking all the way up, over the Durban Road, over the N1, all the way up to just a little bit before Tiger Valley Center. There's some offices and stuff there. Okay, maybe a little bit further down. Shouting for my mommy, Mama! She doesn't care because she's walking. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. And yes, the black dress, the black romp was there going. No jokes. It's vivid. It's printed in the mind. And my mom walks, and I come to her offices out of breath, tired, and refuse to go to school. And for the first time on a grade 1 age, I realized how far my mom worked every day to work. Never did it consider my mind that my mom walked so. And it wasn't because my dad was bad. Hy het hom vrek gewerk met skofte. So he had to, if he can't be there to help, he can't be there to help. And he was keeping people safe and all those fantastic things. And walking, and I realized, man, my mom walks extremely far every day. You know why she walked so far? It's to set us up for success. It's to set us up for success. I can remember another time I was a little bit older. I'm not going to say my age back then because I was quite older. Things got a little bit better, and my dad was picking my mom up at a very, very famous businessman. He was a South African Springbok coach as well. She worked for him as a PA. And I can remember one day I was sleeping in the car. My dad wakes me up because he's a gentleman and he sends his kids to go pick his wife up at work. Anyways, and as I was a bit stemmer car, I closed the door and I hit my finger in the car door. Yeah. But my dad is sitting in there. So I didn't feel anything. It's not painful. Okay, it's very painful, but I don't feel anything. I show my dad, that's fine. I walk through the gate, my finger painting, walk into the offices, and I can remember this vividly. My mom was standing up the stairs, and the moment I saw my mom, the moment my eyes caught my mom, the pain flooded back all over again. I was crying so much, she had to buy me a pie, okay? She had to bribe me with a pie. There was no mark. There was nothing broken. But the moment I saw because there's this connection, it's my mom. She's the one who takes care of me. There's no control. And, I just don't cry anymore, but she still buys me pies though. Okay, any case. And it's then when I realized that she did what she did to set me up for success. I want you to grab hold of this. That there are sacrifices that you need to make in your life. And there's a price that you will have to pay. But it's not going to be for your benefit. It's not going to make you happy. It's not going to make you comfortable. But the sacrifices you do is going to set up a next generation for success. And some mommies have to walk far. Some mommies need to bribe their children with pies. Some mommies need to work late. And you're doing everything that you can in your life to put someone up for success. And the worst thing any child can do is to take arrogance in their ability. Because our success is dependent on the people around us. You are not as great as you think you are. You are not as awesome as you think you are. And be careful when you look at other people and they're a little bit lower than you and they're a little bit poorer than you. It's not because you are fantastic. It's because you have a support structure that they do not have. I had a mom that beat me to school. Otherwise, I would have been a professional band player at the age of 13. Okay? I had a dad who was there who forced me to do maths. Otherwise, at 16, I would have been a professional gamer. Okay. Not making any money, but I will play games the whole day. Anyways. And it's not because I'm brilliant. It's not because I'm fantastic. But people have been laying foundations for me. People have been forgiving me. People have been laying sacrifices for me so that I can take a slow step. And the times when I wasn't strong enough, I had parents who were strong enough. I had family who was strong enough. I had a church who was faithful enough. I was involved with people that was there for me, not because of who I am, but because of it was a setup in my life. Amen. Now, after screaming so passionately about the pies, I want us to jump back to this. Most scholars believe that the Stella recounts a campaign of Hazael of Damascus in which he defeated, now hang on, both of and They give us the two names. And the names is the following. Yes. Jehoram and Ahaziah. Now to us, okay, fantastic. But I want you to pick up on these names and how they come to these names, because I need you to put on your thinking cap now. I want to talk about, it's a setup. I want to talk about relationship. I want to talk about connectedness. I want to talk about sacrifice. I want you to give your attention. I'm going to take you to the place where they pop up in the Bible. Okay, remember, they take the information on this archaeological evidence. They look at who's the kings, who's the gods, what's the language, what's the time. And when we link this up with the Bible, we pick up these two names that pop up. Now, pick up on this. 2 Kings 8. I want you to pick up on this. We're in chapter 8 of 2 Kings, okay? That's important information. Now, in the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, now this is phenomenal. His name is a little bit different in the Bible for the simple reason. In this period of time, there's a lot of mixing of names. For some reason, it seems like the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah had similar names during this period. And that's why it seems confusing, because you can't just look for Ahaziah. You need to look for Ahaziah of Israel, or you need to look for Ahaziah of Judah, because they were in similar times, they had similar names, but they were from different ages. So that's why the name was changed, not because we are cheating with the information, just to be specific about who this person is. So it's the same person that the scholars are referring to. Now, you would not believe this. When I started reading this section and started studying about this in 2 Kings 8, now, you had to be here last week to pick this up. Just earlier in this chapter, you would not believe who pops up in this reign of this king. You guys want to take a guess? The Shunammite woman from last week. Yeah. Remember last week about Elisha and the son who passed away and the Shunammite woman? For some reason, this entire journey links us up with another story of this woman in the chapter where this archaeological evidence of these two kings have popped up, and this woman is highlighted by this king in the story. Okay, another story. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the beginning of chapter 8, speaking about this king where this archaeological findings has taken place, and we're just going to read this, and then we're going to land. Okay, it's few verses. Now Elisha had said to the woman, which woman? The woman whose son he had restored to life. We spoke a lot about her last week. Arise and depart with your household and sojourn wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and it will come upon the land for 7 years. A famine for 7 years. The moment when you see Elisha and you see the word famine, it means that the nation has turned away from God. So there's this idea from the Old Testament that God or Yahweh pulled away from the nation of Israel when they started serving other gods, and bad things happened because they weren't worshiping the God of Jerusalem or the God of Israel. Okay, so I need you to pick up on that. And what's interesting about this famine is that it says it lasts for 7 years. Now, I know it's a little bit technical, but Elisha's mentor was Elijah. And he had a big fight with a lady named Jezebel. Now, that's a sermon for another total day. But we notice that this famine in Elisha is double that period than what Elijah had. In other words, I want you to pick up on the terminology. Things are going worse down this line as the descendants of Ahab and Jezebel is making a mess of things and turning away from Yahweh. This is what the terminology, what basically standing there. Now, verse 2. So the woman arose and did, listen to this, the Shunammite woman whose son was raised. We're talking about a lot of time later. I can't give you a time to say years or months, I don't know. But there's a big gap in the text between when the son was raised and when this section pops up. So the woman arose and did according to the obedience of the Shunammite woman, of the man of God. She went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. Now hold on. Relocating is not a small thing. When you are, remember I want you to link this up with last week, when you are a successful businesswoman, when you are influential in your community, just picking things up and going somewhere else is not a small ask. It's a big assignment that's taking place. You don't just move and become successful in another place. It takes years to build up a reputation. It takes years to build up a business. It takes years to build up a name. And just relocating is no small task. But the Shunammite woman is obedient according to the word of the Lord. I want you to listen. I want you to listen to the setup for success that's taking place because of the sacrifice and the obedience of the Shunammite woman. Actually, this section is known as the perseverance. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. The perseverance of the Shunammite woman. In other words, the thing that caused her to be sustainable in her season. Verse, verse 3. Okay, any case. Now listen to this. Now the king was talking to Gehazi. Can you remember Gehazi from last week? Now what king is this? You guys want to take a guess? It's one of the kings that was defeated, that's hinted in this archaeological find that's in the Museum of Israel as we are speaking today. So this is where this is the king. And what makes this phenomenal is who this king was. Now I'm going to talk about that in a second. Was talking with Gehazi to the servant of the man of God, saying, tell me all the great things that Elisha has done. Now, why this is mind-blowing is because this king was not a king who was serving Yahweh. Why on earth is a king who's serving other gods inquiring about the servant of Yahweh, the prophet of Yahweh, and is looking for gossip news? He's looking to find information. Now, who is this king? I want to show you. Jehoram, or Joram, as the shorter version of that is the king of Israel in the mid-9th century BC. Now, this information is coming from the Lexham Bible Dictionary. Now, again, link this information up with the dating on the archaeological stone that was found, okay? The next thing is, and this is important, Jehoram, his name means Yahweh is exalted. Now, why this doesn't make sense is because he was Ahab's son. Ahab, Jezebel, they are promoting the worship of God. They are persecuting the prophets. They have children, and they link their children's name up with Yahweh that is great. This is mind-blowing. And the text is very clear that just because he's got a name, it doesn't mean he's got the actions that fit the name. The text is very clear that he wasn't a servant of Yahweh. So his name links up with this. His gossip news links up with it. Check out the next one quickly. I'm running a little bit. A son of Ahab, who was preceded by his brother Ahaziah, reigning Israel for 12 years in the mid-9th century. This is mind-blowing things that I'm picking up on this. Maybe it's just me who gets excited, because here's the hint that's popping up. This king asking something. You can put up the next slide. There's a difference between conviction and curiosity. See, a lot of people is curious about the things of God, but few people are convicted about the things of God. We find this king who's got the right name. His family's a little bit messed up. They've got the titles of Yahweh. They've got the function and the authority, but they limit themselves to curiosity. They limit themselves to entertainment. It's entertaining to listen. This king is standing on this side. He's listening to the story. Gehazi is coming to him. Gehazi is telling him the story about the Shunammite woman, because that is what Elisha did. That is the miracle that God did through the hands of Elisha. But in the meantime, in the story, the Shunammite woman in this chapter is returning from the Philistine land after 7 years. And she gets to the king, and the king asks her the following. He says, is this true, what Gehazi is telling me? And the Bible says she begins to tell the entire story. Listen to this. Okay, we're going to get to that section in a second. And she begins to tell the story, and the king is so moved by the story that he restores her land to her. Remember, she moved away because of the word of Elisha. But when she came back, other people had control over her land. And when the king, who is not a follower of Yah, he's got the right name and he's... Nice. Okay, now gaan ek verder skep. And she returns and she tells him the story. And the king restores not only her land, but restores to her the profit that was made on the land over that 7 years. The Shunammite woman. The story was so significant, so phenomenal, that the king restored everything to her. Now, that's a fantastic story. But I want you to pick up on this woman again. A woman who comes back after 7 years, and the first order of business is to make sure that she sets up a family for success. And without fear, without holding back, she knocks on the king's door, not being scared. And guess what happens? There's a setup for her success. You know, just the other day, we go through this dramatic story of a son passing away, and we fast forward a moment in the text, and we notice that everything that happened was to set her up for success, so that when she returns, the right doors will open for her, and she will be restored, not only for her, but for her entire family. In a time of war, in a time of struggle, and we see God making the right moves up in heaven. We see a mommy making the right moves down on earth. And when these teamwork gets together, when we function as a family, we notice that God has been there all along. We didn't understand the story back then, and there was a lot of confusion and a lot of doubt. But later on, we see the journey that she has gone through. It was a mommy who was selfless, who did everything for her family. And there was a God in heaven that was in control over the entire situation. And a family was set up for success because of this togetherness. Now, I don't want you to confuse this. It was never been about selling a story. And again, this point popped out for me, especially I'm thinking about my mom as well. It's not about selling a story. It's about telling a story. So many of us live our lives trying to sell Jesus. We are trying to fix people. We are trying to benefit from a story. We are trying to be entertaining from a story. And if I take my mom, when she speaks about what God has done in her life, it's never about her fame, her function, her prosperity. It's not about selling something. It's about telling other people about what God has done. And there's an extremely fine line between the two. It's so fine that churches can't see the difference anymore. Churches can't see the difference between selling the gospel and telling people about the gospel anymore. We can't see the difference anymore. It's so close to one another. We are so self-righteous. We are so blinded by our arrogance that we miss this fine line. And then, I don't want to end off on a negative note. The last thing, and I've been repeating this over and over and over again, is that it's about setting others up around you for success. The Shunammite woman was setting other people up for success. Pastor Peter Hansen, this vision, we see Jesus sitting on his throne and he's setting up people for success. And there's this family type of environment. We see Pastor Peter Hansen seeing his mom and immediately links up with, there was a mom who set him up for success in life. And the success didn't come the way he thought it, but that's the first thing that pops up into his heart when he thinks about going to a better place. His mom is sitting over there. Because she did something in his life. She moved something in his life. It's about setting people up for success around us. Can you make the sacrifices for those who's going to come after you? Or are you only concerned about what you can benefit out of the journey? When we speak about the idea of God and church, there's always a bigger picture. There's always a bigger picture. And if we live only for our season, we're going to find ourselves like the rich man. We expanded his properties. We enlarged his storerooms. But when God looks at him, he says to him, you fool. You fool. We must be careful that our focus is not wrong. And there's nothing wrong about providing stability and paying for Netflix and watching TV. I'm not saying that those things are wrong. I'm not saying those things are wrong. But your children is dependent on you. They are dependent on your stability to be successful in life. They can be smart, they can be well educated, they can have good manners, but there's something about a mommy or a daddy or a family that's stable that gives them an advantage that nothing else in this world can give them. Nothing else in this world can give them. And I want you to take the spiritual as well. When it comes to God, it's not about money in the bank. It's not about success by worldly matters. But when you have God in your heart, there's a different setup for success because we measure things differently then. We think about the world then differently. Things are different in our lives. I want you this week, what can you do for others to make sure that they become successful? Can I take it one step further? Who can you pray for this week? Who can you pray for this week that will make them successful? I'm not talking money. If you think this is where you're missing this point. It's a prayer of a mommy that sets them up for success. It's the sacrifice of a daddy that sets them up for success. It's a church community like this that sets people up for success. Because guess what? While others are running around, we have rocked up to pray for someone. We have rocked up to show our faithfulness. We have rocked up to allow God to use us to be the difference. We are setting people up for success in their lives where they walk with God just because you've shown up this morning. Just because you said a prayer. Set up those around you for success. That's the only way. That's the only way this journey is going to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to come to a point in our lives where we're going to say, we had a good life, but it impacted no one around us. It made no difference in the lives of those around us. And if that doesn't bother you, I need you to look at your heart because that bothers God. It moves God. It hurts God. A phenomenal quote, I can't remember who the theologian was, but he says the following. He says, if you want to find God in a nation, look for where people are hurting. And that was profound. It's phenomenal. If you wanted to find where Jesus was in the Bible, you're going to find him at places that doesn't look so churchy. You're going to find him at places that doesn't look so comfortable. You're going to find him at places that's not culturally accepted. You're going to find him at places where people are broken and hurting. But they're open to respond to God. It's a setup that builds the foundation for success. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word that carries power and authority, Father. It's so phenomenal, Father. Father, when we read your word and when we study it, we need to become shy about the lack of faith that we've got, Father. We need to become embarrassed with how limited we are. Father, you are so much bigger than us and so phenomenal. The Bible speaks about being a good father, being a good shepherd, Father, and our hearts are overwhelmed with your love, Father. Father, may your word carry power in our hearts. May it carry authority. May it produce fruit so that we can be a blessing to others, Father. May your Holy Spirit keep this message alive in our hearts this week, Father. Father, may you help us that we begin to not focus on ourselves so much anymore, but that we can be the church that devotes themselves to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, to prayer, to those around us. Thank you for your faithfulness. We pray that in Jesus' wonderful name. And everyone says, amen. Amen.